The difference between our sport and other sports is the work that you actually do in the car. The movements of your legs, your arms, your eyes. And that's why there will always be something of a myth about the Formula One drivers. When you're passionately involved in something, you think of nothing else. It's also something of a secret to success.
What are the main differences between the 70s when you drove a Formula One and now?
I don't think there are many differences. I think the sport of motor racing, Grand Prix racing, has changed so rapidly since the very beginning, since the 100 years of racing. And the driver, the personality of the driver remains exactly the same. Whether it was Nuvolari, whether it was Fangio, whether it was Jim Clark or Niki Lauda or Alain Prost today, it's the same type of man, the same type of personality. Of course, technically it has changed. But that's the whole essence of Grand Prix racing, technical change, constantly improving. And Grand Prix racing today is exactly the same spirit as it was when it all began.
Could we say that turbo cars with more than 100 horsepower, more than 1,000 horsepower, sorry, are really more difficult to drive than atmospheric cars?
The arrival of the turbo power in the last 10 years has been very impressive. And today, for Alain to drive a car with 1,200 horsepower, for example, is technically very difficult. But of course, again, the change has been very marked. When I first drove Formula One, there were very small tires. And of course, the tires became much larger. The difference of driving technique changed dramatically in that period. And many of us found it complicated to create that difference of change. And I think the same type of change came for Alain to drive normally aspirated, because when he arrived in Formula One, he's old enough to remember normally aspirated. But now he drives turbo, so that change has been accommodated. It's more difficult, but the next generation will have another problem to accommodate.
Do you agree with Jackie Stewart's opinion?
Yes, I agree 100%. I think it's at the moment with turbo car engine we get many problems, especially about the safety point of view, because the cars are very quick. But I think at their time, if we want to speak about the power and the safety was not as good as we have at the moment, especially on the track. So it's they made their time. We are making our time, and it's the best drivers are always the best drivers. They are always going to the best teams. So I think we can compare very easily.
Jackie Stewart, what do you think of Alain Prost as a driver? Do you think he's the best?
As a skier, he's a fantastic driver.
Well, my life is divided in two, you know. It amounts to before Formula One and after Formula One, or before racing and after racing, if you like. So some periods were a little difficult, you know. The first good time was a siesta at Antibes. Rental carts during a holiday I spent with my parents when I went karting for the very first time. When I was 14 years old, I had one arm in a cast and did a race, a small club race that I won with one hand. Did your true vocation start on that day? Yes, already. That was a starting point. I mean, on that day day I said, this is fantastic. I must absolutely try and go karting. But I didn't have the means or the money, and my parents were dead against it, so even then there were problems. Then later, 2 or 3 years later, I saved up for 2 or 3 years and tried to get my hands on some money. I bought a second-hand kart at a really ridiculous price, obviously against the opinion of my parents once again. So that was something of the second period. So then for 1 year, I went in for competitions, and things didn't go too well because, well, you know, karting isn't really working so well. Then the third step was when I began to work a bit with my father, going to school at the same time, and bought a new kart. That was the first real hit as regards results. So I became a regional champion and then French champion. Then that was the karting period, and after that, around the age of 17, yes, around 17, 18. And after that, the Orlef flight, the Castellet Circuit driving school, which was paid for me by the Federation because I won the French karting championship. At this school, the best driver wins a really important driving grant because it covers the complete budget needed to go through a whole Renault Formula season. I won this driving school prize, so that was a real point of departure between the passion, well, what you might call complete amateurism, leading on to nothing, karting, to something which can really lead up to a fantastic career in automobile driving, already with the confirmation of being a driver, I'd say a semi-professional driver.
Il a été champion d'Europe de karting. Voilà. Et l'écart est exactement à l'arrivée de 13 secondes et 7 dixièmes avec un
I learned a lot, first and foremost physically, because racing driving is very hard physically. The circuit is full of bumps and very dangerous too. So I learned to go just a bit beyond the limit, because with a car that's difficult to drive, things are always difficult. It's always difficult to go to the limit point on a circuit like that when there's a risk of coming off all the time, a risk of hurting yourself very badly. I got the impression of what Formula One really was for the very first time when last year I was in a car which was not very competitive, and I saw that immediately, well, that the car had enormous qualities, enormous potential. It was really a pleasure not just to drive a competitive Formula One race, but which had, well, that I have the means, I think, to develop, to take it further, and it's particularly encouraging for the future. I always had the impression of being one with a car. I don't know how to say it. It's not like a person, a human being, but it's, well, it's like a dinosaur which frightens you and then leaves you standing silly. It's impressive. A car to me is something like that. It's something so dangerous, but that I try to dominate. But often the car dominates me. We have a sort of strange relationship together, but for me it's something really fantastic. Do you sometimes caress it when you arrive in the morning? Oh yes, always. When I reach the circuit in the morning, the very first thing I do is to go and see the car. For instance, I know that the mechanics have not changed anything without me knowing about it, without my being aware of it. But just to see the body so clean and the wheels spotless and so on, from the car that was completely taken apart the previous evening because they've always been disassembled. A lot of things are always being changed on them. To see it built back up again like that, clean, ready to go, just makes me want to do one thing, to get in and drive off. And every time I get into the car, even if it's every day of the week, it still gives me just as much pleasure. Relationships with the team are very complex. A team includes about 100 people, but you don't work with 100 people at the same time. During trials, you work with 10 or so people. During races, you work with 30 or 40 people. Among the members of the team, there are mechanics, there are engineers, sponsors, people who accompany you. And all of them form part of a group, of a complete team. So, you know, it's very difficult to, well, for instance, to be pals with a mechanic. In my case, I've never really been a friend. Well, you know, a pal. Well, I've never really been friends with a mechanic. I think that it might be a little hard when you look at things from the outside, but I just don't think it's possible to become friends. Why with one or two mechanics and not with the others? I think that it probably sets up a pretty unhealthy feeling in the team. So in my case, I think that the best relations to have with the team are, I think personally, something like the relations we have in the Marlboro-McLaren team. Everybody is absolutely good friends, but really, really friendly. But otherwise, as far as work goes, things never go further than that. It's a real working relation from the outset, and everybody has enormous respect for everybody else. I've got enormous respect for my mechanics. Really, I would do anything for them, but things don't go any further than that. I'm not the kind of a guy to go tapping them on the shoulder and find out what they're doing.
You're the creator of this car, the brain behind the engine. What kind of a man is Alain Prost professionally?
He's completely dedicated. That's the first thing that comes across when you work with him. And he's obviously an exceptionally talented driver. He has a natural driving ability. That natural driving ability allows him to operate in a more relaxed way in the car. And so I think for me, at the moment, he is the complete driver in Formula One.
Some drivers seem to be very romantic and take a lot of chance. He gives the impression of being classical, cool.
That's
clean,
right.
As they say in French.
That's right. I think that comes back to my first statement, which is that because of his natural talent, he doesn't have to force it to achieve the performance, and therefore he always has a little bit left, and this gives him the capability of operating within himself, and therefore he is never stretched.
Would you say that as a technician he understands more about engines than other drivers?
Well, I think he is quite a mechanical person, and he certainly follows everything that happens on the car very, very closely. And because of his dedication, he can remember setups on the car from 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And he will know after a certain time in the season, he will know exactly what to do with the car to make it operate the way he wants it to.
You can't see a single fault in him as a driver?
As a driver,
frankly.
Well, for me, he's become even better this year, which surprises me, because I think there must be, before you win the first World Championship, there is enormous motivation because you have the main goal to achieve. And I'm always surprised when people have the same drive afterwards.
You've seen people going flat after?
Yes, and I feel it's a natural reaction because of the pressures of Formula One, the effort that it takes. The natural reaction is to just relax a little bit. And with Alain, I mean, even in the testing in January, he seemed to me to have the attitude that, he'd almost forgotten about winning the World Championship and was already thinking about winning again, which surprised me.
T-shirts left in the bag, you know. I tried to find one in your bag this morning.
I did in yours.
Yeah? That's my T-shirt from tonight.
There are two types of competitors. There's the adversary, you know, the one in the other team, and the teammate who's also a competitor. And what's worse, it's very often him, the one you have to look out for, because he's the reference. It's the only way to take your bearings, because he's the one who's driving the same car. It's with him that it's most difficult, and it's with him, in this particular case, Niki Lauda, that I have the best friendly relations. Go.
Louder coming with it. Third center.
So who is Prost for you?
I know him very well because I've driven with him many years, and I think he's one of the best in Formula One.
What are your impressions about the driver, about the man?
I never had a problem with him. I always liked him as a person and as a pilot, and I think it will never change.
Luck, of course, helps. It's a little push in the back. But you never win a race because of luck. If you win, perhaps it's because the others had a little bit less luck than you. Maybe they had problems, or maybe their car was not so well prepared, and so on. But you never win a race on luck alone. But from time to time, I think that between two drivers, two teams in general, not for a race, for a full season or an entire career, some drivers are a bit luckier than others. That's true. Or they're a bit more successful, but I think that counts very little. I imagine, maybe I'm wrong, that fear, and particularly fear of death, plays a part in your business. Yes, let's say it's always there in any case. I'm a natural worrier, and well, you know, death probably frightens me less than an accident which would have effects on me for the rest of my life, paralysis or something like that. Old age frightens me too, but death isn't an obsession. Probably I'm a little obsessed by the idea of having an accident. And how does that reveal itself during a race? It often reveals itself before or after the race, as often happens in war, but not really during the race or during the event. Even if you hit another driver, or you almost come off the track in a very difficult point, well, you know, you get a bit warm and then it's gone, it's over. But afterwards, after the race, 2 or 3 hours later, you think, well, if I'd come off the track here, I could really have hurt myself or even got killed. Or before the race, when you inspect a circuit, you think, this bend. You imagine different moments, for instance, what a mechanical failure in a bend like that could produce. And that's what fear is really all about. It's a little bit of worry, too, but I think that it's quite normal. In any case, I think I'm a worrier. I think I'm afraid of having an accident. I think that anyone who says that they're not afraid, they're really just totally unaware. I hope there are fewer and fewer of them because they make us all take risks, or they're just liars. Don't you ever say, what am I doing here? I could retire? I thought it once, maybe twice. When? At the time of Didier Pironi's accident, when he jumped on top of me because I was the other one involved when he had his accident. So I was really the first witness of the accident, and when I went to see the car, that's when I thought, what the hell am I doing here? And the second time was Gilles Villeneuve's accident, at Zolder too. The next day I drove almost as usual, because I think that deep down at the bottom of things we must have, I don't know whether we're lacking something or whether we've got something in addition, but I don't think we're really normal, you know. Do you believe in God? Very much so. In what way? Well, I believe. Are you Catholic? Yes, a Catholic. Practicing? I did practice, but I mean, what does that mean? You know, Mass is always at the same time as a Sunday morning warm-up. My preparation, well, let's say it's really difficult to explain because in Formula One racing there's nothing really specific. For instance, somebody who does athletics, because I did a bit or even played football, always does his training either in the evenings or on Mondays, Wednesdays or Fridays. Everything is programmed and everybody works together. For us, there's nobody to train us. You know, personally, we don't really have a trainer who says you'll have to do half an hour of jogging, you need to do a bit of cycling. It's just like that. It's up to us to take it into consideration to get on with it. In any case, I really don't want anybody to put over an image of me. I don't really know what image I have, but I think that on a personal level, when I'm with friends, I like to laugh, I even drink a bit, it happens, and it's certainly not the image I've got at the level of the specialized press, but only among the people who know me as a driver. There's a time for everything. There's a time for work, there's a time to have a good time, there's a time for family life, for relaxing, for leisure, for sport, and all that is part of your life.
C'est vraiment pas de chance, ça. Devant la là, devant Boinard en plus. C'est con pour toi. Enfin, j'ai gagné au tie-break 7-6. 7-2, non, combien 7-4. Il manque un 7. C'est pas mal qui
The best preparation is just totally disconnecting. That's what I've always done since I began racing. What I mean is that when I'm at work, I'm in it 100%. It doesn't stop me thinking about my family, but when I'm at home, I try to think about racing as little as possible. You have to think about it because there's always work to be done, perhaps just to call the works, to discuss with engineers, to prepare for the next race, to set up the cars and all that. You have to think about it. But when I'm at home, I disconnect completely. For instance, neither my wife, my son, or anybody else in the house normally talks to me about car racing. Whether I win or lose normally, when I get home on Sunday evening or Monday morning, it's over. Everything has been forgotten, and we start thinking about the next race. It's a question of organization, but in any case, it has nothing to do with thoughts about the race, although there's no doubt that you do think about it. In any case, I'm not hooked on the race when I'm at home, and that's very important because it helps me to concentrate on other things and not just think about all the problems that could crop up. Particularly since I've moved in here, I have the impression of having segregated even more than usual my private life from my driver's life. I had decided to really be careful about fuel and particularly about brakes. They were my two major problems for this race. In spite of everything, the car was not really going so well. It wasn't behaving so well, and the brakes, as you know, were not performing at the beginning. Nevertheless, excuse me for interrupting, but this morning after the warm-up trials, you seemed to be very optimistic. It was going very well, but I was really optimistic, so maybe we made a few mistakes on the technical level. We changed the turbos because we wanted to be sure that if it rained, because they had also said it was going to rain, we'd have a flexible engine at low speeds, and Nicky had tried the small turbos. He did the best time with that, and I thought it was safe, and then the engine didn't work as well as all that. He also messed about a bit at the beginning, and the brakes weren't, well, they weren't great. But in particular, I think that I wanted to do a tactical race and really get into things, and I was caught in my own trap in that I wanted to wait until the very last minute and then attack at the very end. But I don't think I'm sorry, because when I think that during the technical check the Ferrari still had 10 liters or so of fuel, whereas me, with my computer, I ran the whole race to finish once again with just 1 liter of fuel in the tank, and that's how it was, and I could have gone faster. So, you know, catching up with the Ferraris is good, but passing them was impossible because my brakes weren't up to it. So in reality, I'm satisfied with my 4 points, although nevertheless points are important from time to time. For almost a year now, either I win or I break down. This is the first time on the podium for a long time. But you must have been disappointed, because although your finish was really spectacular, there was still Alboreto, and he won the race. Do you consider him to be your main rival for the championship? Yes, I've always considered him to be my main rival, in that he is, and we saw it again today, the second driver, if you can put it that way, because Janssen is doing very well. He helped him a lot, and he marked points that I didn't mark myself. And then on the technical level, Ferrari has caught up with us, even gone beyond us for road holding and fuel consumption. That's why I'm disappointed. Not because of the race. Finishing third isn't so disappointing, but it's more for the future. So tell us about the future. How does it look? Well, it looks first like a first leg in Detroit, where I'm not really optimistic. I mean, let's be frank about it. The Ferraris are very good, the Lotuses are too, and it's going to be very difficult to get a place on the podium. However, after Detroit, I'm a little bit more optimistic, but I do think that everybody must take their responsibilities. I don't want to lose the championship again this year. You were world champion with McLaren, and you almost were with Renault. Do you know why? I've always known why. I think I've never hidden behind a mask, and I've always been outspoken. We weren't world champions, and I think that unfortunately it's that they didn't know how to learn from this failure. For all the time that I believe Renault should have been world champion, I think it should have been at least 2 times, especially in 82 and 83. Everything I've said about Renault, it's because I wanted to win those world championships with them, and it was always a sore point for me not to be world champion with a French team. Things are not completely lost yet for me, but I think that it will be very hard for them, even if they want to come back maybe. Well, at least I hope so. Maybe in 1 or 2 years' time, you can never tell. Formula One is, well, first it was a sport and a passion, and now it's become a business. And it's very important to consider that from the right standpoint. It's worth preserving it just for itself. It's essential not to mix everything up, because I don't think I would like car racing as much if I just considered it to be a sport or a passion. I consider it to be my business, and that's why I do it. I have that impression, perhaps more than other people, because to me it's a real profession. I need to devote myself to it. When I'm in my element to 100%, there's no room for my wife or family on a circuit, except perhaps in some cases where maybe they bring me some peace of mind. But that's very rare. I've worked a lot in this house. I don't like it yet. I don't completely like it yet. I know what I want to change, and unfortunately I'm a bit impatient. And well, for instance, this table, I'd like to change it. It bothers me every time I see it. I say, well, I'm going to change this table. The apple trees in front, too, I want to cut them down, and I see those apple trees every day. I say that until they're cut down, I won't be completely happy. It's part of my character. There are things I want to do, things I want to change, and I want everything straight away. But on the other hand, I don't forget even 6 months later. Do you want to change it because you've seen something else? No, it's because I think it's not really ideal. It's not really ideal to my mind. In the overall scheme, it's something, well, there's certainly something which would be better over there. So until I find it, and it's no problem, I'll find it. I've always had an office wherever I've set up, whether it was in France or of course in Switzerland. I've always wanted to have an office in the house. It's essential to me. First, it's the place I go to work, where I make my phone calls, where I handle my paperwork. I'm not just a Formula One driver. I have outside activities too, and therefore I need to have an occupation other than that of a normal Formula One driver, and to do so I need an office. Well, this one is maybe something completely different. It's a whole unto itself. Well, in the house, it's just above my bedroom, and it's completely isolated, so when I want to get away from everything, or even from strangers who are in the house, guests and so on, I hide myself away in this office and work quietly, and I've got everything I need to feel really good. I have a small lounge, my television, my bathroom, even a small gym, and I can get away from things and concentrate on what I want. It's really a refuge, and that's very important to me because even in the house from time to time I like to be on my own. Well, there's nothing really extraordinary about it, no great trophies or souvenirs. I'm not really keen on trophies or collecting trophies. For a long time I just gave them away to my family, my relatives, and now since 1984 I've been giving them to McLaren. They keep them for me even if I regret it one day. In any case, for now I don't think about it too much. All I have here are a few helmets which all represent something. That's why I've got them. Well, that one, that's the last helmet I used when I was at Renault, and for me that represents a piece of my life. That one's the first victory, again with Renault, in '81 at Dijon. This is the helmet I wore during the World Championship at Brandschatz in 1985. I'm sure it's the most important one for me, and then that one, that's the first one with McLaren. And then there are 2 or 3 pictures which symbolize for me part of my career. Brandschatz in 1984 with Niki Lauda. He's definitely the best teammate I ever had. In any case, he's the one I got on best with. There's a photo which is something of a symbol too. We're both in front of our cars. I really like him a lot. '84, the win in Brazil, and then this photo of the complete McLaren team in 1984 after the first World Championship title. That was definitely one of my best seasons, even if we didn't get the title. In any way as concerns the atmosphere, it was fantastic. I haven't programmed myself to be world champion because I believe that in my business, because of the mechanical aspect, which counts a lot, you know, from one year to another you can have a car which hardly goes anymore. So I wasn't programmed like that, but I followed my path, and more than anything I had this philosophy, this idea. As soon as I do something, well, I think I was really very professional right from the beginning of the race. I wanted everybody to just follow me, anyway, those who were working with me. And as soon as they didn't do that all the time, well, there were problems even so. But I always stuck to my idea, and I think that now, without changing anything, I've never tried, I've never demanded that there are people, I've never said to them, like me, follow me. I've never done anything like that, and I believe that now people like me a lot. I think it's also because I win. And because I've won and because I've been world champion. But just by being world champion, I was able to prove to those people who criticized me 2 or 3 years earlier that I was the one who was right, and that was my very best victory. But I'm not proud of it. It's simply a reassurance, and now I think I've got an image of someone who wins and who doesn't make mistakes on the professional level, and I think that's ideal. That makes me feel better than anything.